many different theories from neuroscientists most of whom believe that the firing of electrical impulses, the flow of chemicals across synapses between the neurons, in some sense, maybe gross electrical activities across brain areas. In some sense, the activities of the neurons themselves, circuitry, whole brain areas, in some sense, consciousness is a product of all of that.
Tononi just said something that most people will hear and immediately forget. Consciousness doesn't stop, it relocates to a different state. You already know this feeling, that dissolving edge right before sleep takes you, where the world goes soft and something else begins to rise. That threshold isn't absence, it's a doorway. And there is a declassified government document that proves someone very powerful knew exactly what was on the other side. There is a pattern running underneath every sleeping mind on this planet. It has been running underneath civilization for thousands of years, and once you see it clearly, you genuinely cannot unsee it. Here is what that pattern says. Consciousness never stops. It migrates, it shifts frequency, changes address, moves into a different room of the same house. The lights don't go out. The operator relocates. Now think about why that framing has never been the dominant one. Think about what it would mean if the average person understood, from childhood, that their awareness continues operating through the night. That they are not passive recipients of random neural noise. That something is actually happening in there. Something navigable, something learnable, something that traditions spent millennia mapping in precise detail. Certain institutions have a deep preference for the simpler story. The story where you close your eyes, you go dark, you wake up. That story keeps awareness small. It keeps it local, biological, bounded. It keeps you from asking the next question. But ancient Vedic scholars asked it. Tibetan dream yogis asked it. And now, quietly, neuroscientists are arriving at the same coordinates from a completely different direction. Stay with me through this entire thing, because in a few minutes we are going to get to a document, a real, declassified document produced by the United States government that maps the architecture of consciousness during sleep with a precision that will completely reframe what you think you know about your own mind at night. That is the piece this whole conversation is building toward. Do not move, we are just getting started. There is a layer of experience that almost every human being crosses twice a day, and almost no one stops to examine it. It is the threshold between waking and sleep. Not sleep itself, not the dream, the crossing. Scientists call it hypnagogia. The Vedic tradition calls it the state between states. And what happens inside it tells you everything about the nature of consciousness that your standard biology class was never equipped to explain. Here is what actually occurs at sleep onset. Your brain does not switch off like a light. It does not transition uniformly from one mode to another. What happens is far stranger and far more revealing. Individual regions of the brain begin to decouple. They start shifting into sleep mode independently of each other. Your visual cortex may begin generating imagery while your prefrontal cortex is still partially online. Your auditory processing may still be receiving the room around you while something that functions like dreaming has already begun in another region entirely. You can hear a door close in the real world and incorporate it into a scene that is already forming. You can feel your body lying in the bed and simultaneously feel yourself standing somewhere else. Both are real signals. Both are being processed. The threshold is not a wall, it is a gradient. So what does that mean? It means that at sleep onset, you are briefly running two operating systems at once. The waking state system and the dream state system overlap. And in that overlap, something becomes visible that is normally hidden by the noise of full waking consciousness. Yoga Nidra mapped this overlap with extraordinary precision. The practice, which translates roughly as yogic sleep, was developed within the Vedic tradition and is documented in texts that are thousands of years old. The entire methodology is built around one specific goal: teaching the practitioner to remain consciously aware as the body crosses the sleep threshold. Not to fight sleep, not to stay awake. To ride the transition consciously, to hold a thread of awareness through the dissolving of ordinary perception. That is not mysticism for the sake of mysticism. That is a technology, a repeatable, teachable, documentable technique for expanding the range of conscious experience beyond the waking state. And here is where modern neuroscience arrives at the same address. Researchers studying sleep onset have confirmed that the brain during hypnagogia shows patterns of neural activity that do not match either full wakefulness or established sleep stages. It is genuinely its own category. EEG readings during this transition show a mixing of alpha waves, which are associated with relaxed wakefulness, and theta waves, which are associated with deep meditation and early sleep. The brain is doing something that has no clean classification in the standard model. It is in between. Dr. Andreas Mavromatis, who produced one of the most thorough academic studies of hypnagogia ever written, described the state as a distinct mode of mentation, a form of thinking and experiencing that operates by different rules than either waking cognition or dreaming. Imagery arrives unbidden and fully formed. Auditory phenomena occur without external source. The sense of self becomes porous. And crucially, the content of hypnagogic experience is not random noise. It is often highly symbolic, emotionally resonant, and structured in ways that suggest an underlying intelligence organizing the material. Civilizations have known this. The Egyptians built entire ritual systems around the threshold state. Temple sleep, known as incubation, was practiced across the ancient Mediterranean world. A seeker would enter a sacred space, perform specific preparations, and lie down with the explicit intention of receiving guidance through the crossing. At Epidaurus, in ancient Greece, thousands of people made pilgrimages to the sanctuary of Asclepius, specifically to sleep within its walls and receive healing through the dream threshold. This was not superstition. This was a systematic, institutionalized use of the sleep onset state as a technology of perception. The decode move here is important. The threshold is not the interesting part because of what you might see or hear during it. The threshold is interesting because of what it reveals about the nature of consciousness itself. If awareness can persist, observe, and even navigate during the dissolution of ordinary waking perception, then awareness is not produced by waking perception. It is not a byproduct of the alert, daytime brain. It is something that continues operating when those systems go quiet. Something that relocates, as Tononi said, rather than disappears. That is not a small claim. That is a foundational reframe of what you are. Not a brain that occasionally produces consciousness. A consciousness that occasionally inhabits a brain in its fully waking configuration. The sleep onset threshold is where you first catch a glimpse of that distinction. It is the first door, and most people pass through it every single night without ever realizing they are crossing a threshold at all. But here is what they don't tell you. The threshold is only the beginning of the architecture. What lies beyond it? The layered structure of what consciousness actually does once the body is fully under. That is where this gets genuinely extraordinary. And that is exactly where we are going next. There are layers beneath the layer you think you know. Most people, when they hear the word dreaming, picture one thing: the vivid, cinematic, emotionally saturated experience that happens sometime in the night and dissolves by morning. And science gave that experience a name: REM, rapid eye movement. The phase where your eyes dart beneath closed lids, where your body is chemically paralyzed, where the brain lights up in patterns that look, on a scanner, almost identical to waking consciousness. That is the dream layer most people know about. But dreaming is not confined to REM. This is the first thing they get wrong in the popular summary. NREM sleep, the deep, slow-wave phases that dominate the early part of your night, has been documented producing its own dream content. Not the same kind. Quieter, more conceptual, less narrative, more atmospheric. Researchers have pulled people out of slow-wave NREM sleep and asked them what was happening inside, and the reports come back consistently. There was something there. A presence, a knowing, a felt sense of being somewhere that wasn't here. Not a story, exactly. More like an architecture. A space being inhabited without an obvious plot. So here is the question that changes everything. If dreaming isn't exclusive to one phase, if consciousness is producing experience across multiple distinct states throughout the night, then what exactly is happening across all of them? What is the unified function? What is the whole machine actually doing? The answer is this: your brain is consolidating, processing, and replaying the events of your waking life, but it is doing it offline, without your waking-style awareness running interference. Memory replay is the mechanism. During slow-wave sleep, the hippocampus fires sequences of neural activation that mirror the patterns laid down during the day. It is literally rehearsing what you lived, reinforcing what mattered, discarding what didn't. And you are not conscious of it in the ordinary sense. You are not watching it happen. You are it happening. Patrick McNamara, a neuroscientist at Boston University, who has spent decades studying the relationship between sleep and the brain, identified something extraordinary about REM specifically. The fear extinction circuits, the neural pathways responsible for processing threat, reducing trauma, and recalibrating emotional responses, work differently in REM than in any other state. In REM, the amygdala is active, yes, but the prefrontal cortex, The part of your brain that normally governs rational suppression partially disengages. What this means is that REM isn't just replaying emotional memory, it is reprocessing it, stripping the emotional charge from experience without erasing the information. It is, in the most literal neurological sense, a healing mechanism that runs while you are not looking. Now here is the decode move. What the ancients called guidance, what they called divine instruction, what they traveled days to receive, science calls memory replay and fear extinction processing. These are not different things dressed in different language. They are the same phenomenon observed from two different shores. The Egyptians knew this, not metaphorically, operationally. The temples of Serapis and the dream incubation sanctuaries dedicated to the god of healing, Imhotep, were built around a precise technology. A seeker would travel to the temple, undergo ritual purification, fast, sometimes take prepared substances, and then sleep on sacred ground within the sanctuary walls. The priests called it incubation. The seeker was deliberately inducing a particular quality of sleep, a state between waking and deep unconsciousness, specifically to receive information that the waking mind could not access. The dream that came was considered communication from the divine. It was treated as diagnostic, as instructional, as real. And here is what makes this extraordinary when you hold it against what McNamara documented. The Egyptians were not hallucinating a spiritual practice. They were engineering the conditions for optimal REM and NREM processing. The fasting altered neurochemistry. The isolation reduced sensory noise. The ritual created psychological expectation that primed the limbic system. The sacred architecture itself, the proportions, the acoustics, the darkness, calibrated the nervous system toward the threshold states where the brain's offline processing becomes most potent. They had built thousands of years before the invention of the EEG, a technology for accessing the healing and integrative function of sleep. What you call a dream is not a random event. It is not noise. It is not your brain misfiring while the real work happens elsewhere. The dream is the work. The imagery, the emotion, the strange logic of it, all of it is the consolidation process expressing itself in the only language available to a brain that has temporarily suspended its editorial function. You are watching your own integration in real time. And for most of your life, you have been taught to dismiss it before breakfast. Actually, no. Let me say that again. You have been trained to dismiss the most sophisticated processing system your biology runs, the one that operates beyond the reach of your conscious interference, as irrelevant, as noise, as nothing. And that training has a cost. The layers don't stop at REM and NREM. The architecture goes deeper. There is a state that sits between the dream layers and something that researchers have begun to describe in terms that would have made the temple priests nod slowly and say, "Yes, we knew about that too." And what that state can be made to do, deliberately, intentionally, with tools that already exist, is something that most people alive today have never been told is possible. What lies beneath the dream layers is where this conversation is about to become something else entirely. There is a layer beneath the dream layers that has a name. It has a documented mechanism. It has a declassified government report attached to it, and almost no one who wasn't specifically looking for it has ever heard of it. The Gateway Process. In 1983, the United States Army commissioned an analysis of a consciousness research program being run by the Monroe Institute in Virginia. The analyst was a man named Wayne McDonnell. His report, which remained classified for decades before being released, concluded something that should have rewritten the public conversation about sleep, consciousness, and the nature of mind. It concluded that human consciousness can be steered, deliberately, through sound. Here is the mechanism: binaural beats. When you deliver two slightly different frequencies, one to each ear, your brain does not hear two tones. It perceives the mathematical difference between them as a third frequency. And that perceived frequency entrains your brainwaves. It pulls your neural oscillations toward it. If the difference between the two tones is 8 Hz, your brain begins producing more 8 Hz activity. 8 Hz is theta. Theta is the borderland, the state that sits at the edge of sleep. The same threshold you cross every single night in the moments before unconsciousness takes you fully under. So here is the question. If the ancients had sound technology that could induce these states, and a classified government report confirms the mechanism works, then what exactly is a binaural beat? Is it a curiosity? A novelty? A sleep aid you find on a playlist and forget about? No, it is ancient technology rediscovered. The Tibetan monks who chanted in specific intervals for hours at a time, the Gregorian frequencies that made stone cathedrals resonate at particular harmonics, The drumming patterns of shamanic traditions across every inhabited continent, all of it was doing the same thing, entraining the brain, pulling consciousness toward the threshold, creating the conditions for the offline processing that only happens in those specific states. They didn't have the vocabulary of Hertz and brainwave entrainment. They had the practice, and the practice worked. McDonald's report specifically described what happens when hemispheric synchronization is achieved, when the left and right hemispheres of the brain begin oscillating in coherence rather than in their usual independent rhythms. He described it as a state in which the brain enters what is functionally a virtual sleep experience while maintaining a thread of awareness, not fully asleep, not fully awake, exactly the threshold, exactly the hypnagogic borderland, except induced deliberately, held intentionally, and navigable. Lucid dreaming has its own distinct neural signature. Researchers, including Ursula Voss at the University of Frankfurt, documented elevated 40 Hz gamma activity in the prefrontal cortex during verified lucid dream states, the same region that goes quiet in ordinary REM. What this means is that during a lucid dream, a part of your reflective, self-aware consciousness remains online while the rest of the dream architecture runs beneath it. You are inside the processing, and you know you are inside the processing. That is not a metaphor. That is a documented neurological event with a measurable brainwave signature. The decode move here is this. Consciousness isn't a passive passenger in sleep. It isn't something that gets switched off and then switched back on. It is a navigable territory. And the navigational tools have existed across cultures for thousands of years, refined through direct practice, encoded in ritual, embedded in architecture and sound. The CIA didn't discover the gateway. They confirmed it. The monks didn't invent hemispheric synchronization. They practiced it. What changed is that now the mechanism has a name and a frequency and a peer-reviewed paper. You already have access to this. You cross the threshold every single night. The only difference between you and the practitioners who use this deliberately is that you were never told it was a practice. You were never told the threshold had a name. You were never told that the sound playing through your headphones at a specific frequency differential is doing something measurable to your brain's coherent state. You were never told that the monks were running the same technology. And here is the piece that changes how you move through every night for the rest of your life. You are not a passive traveler in your own sleep. You never were. Every night, without a single gatekeeper's permission, your consciousness relocates, processes, heals, and integrates. Sleep is your nightly sovereignty practice. Track the onset, recall the dreams, use audio that entrains the threshold. No institution required, no authority to petition. Your experiences inside this territory matter here. Drop them in the comments. What you've noticed at the edge of sleep, what returns in the morning. Your observations often add layers to this conversation that I couldn't have mapped alone. This community is part of the research. There is more coming. Sacred geometry and the neurochemistry of altered states are the next door. The architecture goes deeper than one night's descent can reach. You are the doorway. You always were. Every night, you walk through yourself. See you at dawn. If you've stood at that threshold, leave what you witnessed in the comments. Every account adds to the map. Subscribe, and the next door opens together.